During NASA's November 19th live stream on 3i Atlas, the atmosphere was strangely weighted. There was a tension in the pauses, a feeling that the unspoken mattered as much as the spoken. The panel spoke at length, listing spacecraft, instruments, observation windows, and wavelengths, but revealed almost nothing truly new. The images that appeared were distant, dim, and heavily cropped. Much of the most crucial data, they explained repeatedly, was still being processed or had not yet been downlinked. Throughout the hour, a subtle pattern emerged. Every statement seemed meticulously rehearsed, every reassurance deliberate. 3i Atlas is just a comet, they emphasized, almost as if the insistence itself were part of a script. And when the feed ended, viewers were left with the sense that the essential discoveries were lingering somewhere beyond the camera's reach. When an object arrives from another star system, the expectation is clarity, not a careful dance around the facts. Sometimes, in fact, the very silence becomes a key part of the story. The briefing felt less like an unveiling and more like guidance toward a single controlled conclusion. Before presenting any substantial observations, the panel repeatedly addressed rumors, stressing that 3i Atlas was a natural comet. Comets act in predictable ways. Comets release dust. Comets drift past the sun. Reassurance dominated over revelation. Yet, behind the scenes, the situation was far richer. Nearly 20 spacecraft had tracked 3i Atlas at different moments across multiple wavelengths, capturing a level of detail that no single telescope on Earth could match. Hubble glimpsed its faint coma. James Webb collected molecular data. Maven traced hydrogen emissions, while Lucy and Psyche observed from hundreds of millions of miles away. And still, the images presented were minimal, a handful of blurry smudges, faint streaks, or dim glows that hinted at complexity, but revealed almost nothing of scale. Repeatedly, disclaimers punctuated the presentation. Instruments had been pushed to their limits, observation angles were far from ideal, calibrations remained incomplete, and much of the raw data could not yet be safely shown. Every note about processing delays became a barrier between the public and the true imagery, between viewers and what might be the most detailed multi-mission record of an interstellar object in history. Even when the panel touched on the comet's peculiarities, the unusually high carbon dioxide ratios, excess nickel relative to iron, or unexpected dust polarization, they brushed past them almost instantly. They hinted that 3i Atlas might hail from a system older than our own sun, but offered no analysis, no pause for reflection. These were dropped as fleeting statements, then abandoned in favor of safe, familiar explanations about comet behavior. They also warned repeatedly about the limitations of early data. Some spacecraft had to maneuver awkwardly to glimpse the object, causing glare, distortions, and artifacts. High-resolution stacks and spectral readings, they explained, were still in processing. Early release might mislead or confuse. Every reassurance emphasized caution. Every clarification highlighted why the public had yet to see what the spacecraft truly recorded. What emerged from the live stream was striking in its subtlety. NASA did not hide in error or ignorance. They framed a narrative, carefully guiding perception. For those paying attention, it was clear that the data existed. It simply had not yet been revealed. The images, the precise spectrographs, the multi-angle, high-resolution observations, they were out there somewhere, waiting to speak when the time was right. And while the live feed projected calm and order, the silence around the details only deepened curiosity. Each skipped frame, each cautious word, hinted that the story of 3i Atlas was far from ordinary. The comet that came from beyond our solar system was being observed like no other object in human history, and yet the world was shown only a faint shadow of its reality. By the end, the message was clear, but unsettling. 3i Atlas is a comet. Everything is under control, and the real data will arrive eventually. No timelines, no raw images, no complete revelations, just a careful, deliberate pause that left viewers with an unmistakable impression. The cosmos had offered a mystery, and we were only seeing the surface.
And while all of these explanations sounded reasonable on the surface, taken together, They formed a pattern that felt deliberate. NASA repeatedly emphasized why they couldn't show the full data rather than why they should. They didn't claim the information didn't exist. In fact, the opposite was true. Across multiple missions, instruments, and wavelengths, a vast dataset had been collected. But the Livestream delivered only fragments, carefully chosen to be safe, non-controversial, and easily digestible. The public was reminded again and again to be patient, to trust the process, to wait for future analysis. Patience is certainly a virtue, but when the most extraordinary visitor in recent history is involved, this selective visibility creates an unsettling tension. NASA insisted that nothing unusual was occurring, yet their deliberate avoidance of the full picture made the silence feel heavier, almost as if it were shielding the public from truths not yet ready to be revealed. As the stream neared its conclusion, the most striking feature wasn't a new image or groundbreaking discovery. It was the pattern of silence itself. Whenever questions arose about unusual behavior, unexpected signals, or the broader significance of an interstellar visitor, answers softened, slowed, and dissolved into layers of caution. NASA repeatedly framed 3I Atlas as an ordinary comet, yet every anomaly they glossed over hinted at something far older, far more complex than the narrative they were willing to explore on camera. They mentioned its potential origin in a star system older than our own, yet they skimmed past what such a revelation might imply. They noted abnormal chemical ratios, unusual dust properties, and subtle non-gravitational forces affecting its trajectory. But each time, they quickly returned to familiar comet analogies. Each fleeting detail appeared like a faint signal in static, then vanished, leaving viewers to question what truly lay beneath the surface. What made this silence even more noticeable was the contrast between questions and answers. Inquiries about shape, composition, origin, and the gaps in the data were met with phrases like "too early to know," "uncertain," or "still under analysis." In normal science, caution is natural. Here, it felt more like the careful management of public perception, a conscious narrowing of focus until the agency could control the entire picture. There is a long history of institutions withholding preliminary data to avoid public confusion. Perhaps that is all this is. But when something drifts in from interstellar space, untouched by our sun, carrying the chemical fingerprints of a place humanity has never seen, the instinct to categorize it as an ordinary comet feels strangely protective. Perhaps they fear speculation, misinterpretation, or the unsettling implications of observations that don't fit known models. By the end of the livestream, the revelation was not in what was shown, but in what remained unspoken. The update came wrapped in calm explanations, reassurances, and promises of future data. The truly intriguing aspects, the strange chemistry, the possibility of an ancient origin, the unusual dynamics were passed over almost too quickly, as if the words themselves could trigger questions NASA was not yet prepared to answer. The consistent weight of this silence transforms it into part of the story itself. It becomes a shadow stretching beyond the edge of what viewers are permitted to see. The unknown, held deliberately or by necessity, hangs in the void, hinting at a fuller picture waiting somewhere beyond reach. As 3I Atlas continues its journey away from the inner solar system, the questions it raises remain unanswered. And if you feel the tension between what was said and what was withheld, you are not alone. There are spaces in the cosmos and in these quiet gaps where official narratives thin, and the truth feels closer to the darkness between the lines. Stay close. Subscribe to explore these hidden edges. Leave a like so that others listening for the silence behind the answers can find their way here. Because sometimes the most important parts of the story are not the words spoken, but the ones carefully left unsaid